Right. Hello and welcome to another video. This is Unity UI Basics 2. The first one was quite a long time ago. However, it's all still relevant. Therefore, I'll link that video somewhere. And I would recommend watching it because we're going to be carrying on from the scene we used last time. So, as a little recap, last time we set up various things. So we looked at changing to the 2D view in scene view. We created a canvas, looked at what that was, and we set up a little bit of UI with buttons, anchoring, and scene management. So if it sounds like any of that stuff you're not sure on, definitely give it a check. If not, maybe you might be fine from here. So we're going to be looking at some more things, just simple features that you can use for UI. So one of the first things we're going to be doing is looking at how we might pass variables through these buttons. That's one thing I mentioned last time was these buttons can call functions, but we can also call functions that have input variables. And obviously we can use those input variables to do different things depending on what the input is. Of course. So what we've got is last time we had one level that we loaded from the menu, so we hit play, and obviously it'll take a little second. When we hit play, we load into this scene, and we can wander around just like before. And we've got just a little scene. So, nothing fancy. We now have two more scenes. Now these are very much the same, basically. The way we're going to distinguish between them is the first scene has 1 cube, second scene has 2, third scene has 3. Obviously, we're not trying to make a fancy game here, we're just demonstrating the UI. So, how would we use the functionality of the button to load the different scenes? Well, I'm going to go ahead and open this menu script. This is what we did last time. So we had a function called play game, which is called by the button, and that will load scene 1. And yet again, if you're not sure what's going on here, just check the previous video. So we could do different scenes. So we could have a public void play level 2 and a public void play level, oh goodness me, play level 3. And that would be fine, and we could just take this, swap out the numbers, and there we've got our levels. Oops, that should be level 3. So that would work, and then we could have each button call the specific level, call this specific function, which will load the right level, and that's fine. Perfectly reasonable to do it like this. But one way that's a little bit, I guess, quicker for you in terms of writing code, we can get rid of all that. I'm going to change the name of this function to called load level. And it's going to take an input of an int, and we'll call this scene index. And what we're going to do is instead of 1, we'll say a scene index here. Oops, did not do that. There we go. So now we've got our script, and it now takes an int. So over in Unity, we'll go back to here, and we're going to have some issues. So when I hit play, it's just not going to do anything. Now it is actually doing something, I think. If I just double check this to make sure the function hasn't gone. Okay, so it actually has gone because the signature is not recognized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach that script, that function, which is load level. There it is. And you can see when we have a function attached that has an input, we have a little box here where we can type in. So because it's an int, this box obviously takes an int. So what I'm going to do is, well, right now it's 0. So if I hit play and I hit play, what we're actually doing is we're reloading this level because this level is scene 0. So what we're going to want to do is swap that out for 1. And if I hit play, we load into this level, just like before. Now, what we could do is we could create a few more buttons. So I'm going to just quickly go to scene view, go to 2D mode, and I'm going to just duplicate this. Put them in kind of this order. Oops, I did not mean to duplicate the text. And there we have it. So we've got these 3 buttons. I'm going to swap. Oops, I still have duplicated text. I'm going to change the text. So this one says play level 1. This one says play level 2. And this one says play level 3. Now we've got our 3 buttons all set up. Now this one has scene 1, this one will have scene 2, and this one will have scene 3. Now there's one thing we still need to do, because currently there is no scene 2 and 3. We go over to build settings, and then we need to drag these scenes in. So I'm going to drag in scene 2, and it's called scene 1, but scene 1 is actually scene 2, and scene 2 is scene 3. Reason being, it starts the numbers from 0, 1, 2. Obviously, I could rename that, but it's not that necessary as long as these numbers match up. So 1, 2, 3. So if I hit play, I can launch this scene from here. Hit play again. Launch this scene from here. We're at level 2 because there's 2 cubes. And level 3. So there we go. We can easily pass variables through the buttons. And it's not just ints. You could pass various things like strings or anything like that. There is kind of a limit to it. So if I say create a public void, let's just call it test. And we'll say take an int A, int B, int C. We're not going to actually do any code in here. But let's say I go to add another function, which you can do by hitting the little plus. Drag in the canvas, because that's where the script's attached to. And over menu script, we are looking for the test function. And it isn't there. Now, why is that? Because this isn't in a format that is acceptable. We've got 3 inputs, and we can't handle 3 inputs with the button. It's just not allowed. So let's bring it down to 2. Still can't do it with 2. We can only take 1 input. Now, this input can be any object. So it could be a game object, could be a prefab, could be something. So you could have a button that spawns a prefab, and you could drag in that specific prefab. You could drag in a scriptable object. You could drag in anything and do whatever you want with that input. Obviously, for this, we've just used an int to use the index, but you could be as creative as you want. So yeah, you could use it for maybe loading saves and stuff like that, and have different buttons for different save slots. There's kind of, the only limit is your own creativity with that. And obviously, another limit is you can only have 1 input. But that's it. So yeah, so that is passing variables through buttons. Now, what we might also want to do, and with regards to the menu, is we might want to have more than just this page. So currently we've got this title screen with game title and the levels we can load. but perhaps we might want to have some submenus. So perhaps you're on the main menu and you might want to change some settings. So you might open options and that would bring you to a new menu. Or maybe the level selection is a separate button that takes you to a page where you can choose all these levels. So that's what we're going to do right now, is we're going to set up different pages on the menu so that we can navigate around a bit. So this right here is our, we've got our whole canvas and everything is in here. But what we're going to want to do now, there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could use separate canvases. So you can child canvases within canvases. That's completely fine. It can be useful for laying out the UI. You can use it as just like a container to keep it in the structure. You could create an image. So say I've got an image here. I could drag this out to fill the background. Just like we did with this background, but then we could child things to this. So let's say we've got a button and now it's childed to this background. And then when we have this page enabled or disabled, this background, we can handle it like that. And that's great. One way that I think, as much as it's not necessarily better than using an image, it's kind of fit for purpose, and that is a panel. So what a panel is effectively just the image component. When you add an image, as you can see, it's got the image component and everything. If I add an image again, you'll see it looks very much, well, it is basically the same. The difference between panel and image when you add them is panel is just got some settings pre-applied. So it's automatically set to stretch to fill its parent. So in this case, the canvas. So it's set that it's going to fill that canvas immediately because typically that's what you're going to want when you're creating these panels, these UI panels or pages. We've also got a background image that's pre-selected, whereas we don't have that in image. So I think that's just I think it's got curved corners. Yeah. So we got curved edges. Obviously, you can change that just like you could with image, and it automatically sets the alpha kind of halfway to 100. So it's not quite halfway. So you can have it kind of faded out. In this case, because it's a totally separate page, I'm just going to fill it so that we can't see anything behind it. So the alpha is full. So realistically, we're going to kind of ignore part of the preset, but panel's just kind of there as a shortcut so you can quickly set up these pages. So I've got a panel, and I'm going to call this panel level selection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these buttons, I'm going to place them in here, and then I'm going to disable this level selection panel. In fact, before I disable it, I'm going to just copy this title, bring it into level selection, and I'm going to change this text to say select a level. And one thing I'm going to quickly do is just resize this so it fits. And there we go. Select a level. Nothing too fancy, very simple. So now we're going to want another button on the main menu. So I'm going to duplicate this button, drag it back onto the canvas. Oops, not into the text object. And I'm going to hide this level selection. So this button here, it should be, sorry, you want to drag it down to the bottom of the list. So one thing to note when it comes to UI is it will draw everything in the order that it is in the hierarchy. So background is at the back because it's at the top, then text is in front of that, and button is in front of that. So if I drag button over text, it hides it. If I change the order, then the text appears on top of the button. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you can't see things, it's because you just need to change the order in the hierarchy. So this play button, I'm just going to call this level select button. I'm going to get rid of this function that was there. And I'm going to change the text inside the button to say select level. probably use a space. Not there, but here. There we go. So we've got our select level button, and then we're going to need to make a function to handle that. So in this menu script, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to know what pages we have, and then we're going to have some way of changing between them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of pages. So pages could just be game objects. We could specify further, maybe rect transform to make sure it's part of the UI, but game object is more than enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this pages equals new list of game objects. And I'm going to make this public just so that we can easily drag things in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called switch page. Sorry, void switch page. And what that's going to do is it's going to just move on to the next page. So currently we're going to have these pages go in order. There's obviously, you could navigate directly to them, and that's something we might cover. But for now, we're going to just move through the list. So to know where we're currently at, we're going to need to store an int. So I'm just going to make a private int called current page ID. I'm going to set it equal to 0. So we'll just make sure the first page is the one we're on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say current page ID, pages, square brackets, current page ID, dot set active false. And then we're going to want this line again, but true. And in between where we enable current page, we're going to want to say current page ID plus plus. Now, there is one issue here, and that is obviously if we run out of pages, we can't move to another page, the next page, because there is no next page. So we want it to loop back around on itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say if current page ID is greater than or equal to pages.count. Then what we're going to do is we're going to just say current page ID equals 0. And that means if you ever increase it beyond the limit, it's going to go back to the beginning. So we can add as many pages as we want to this list, and it's just going to keep cycling through, disabling the one that we were on, and then enabling the next one. So now we need to set this up a little bit more in Unity. So we've got this level select button. But one thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put this all childed to an object. So for now, I'm just going to make all these things childed to background. I'm going to change the name of background to main menu. That'll do. Yeah, main menu. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the canvas. We have our pages array, list. I'm going to drag in this page, main menu, and then level selection. And we're going to want to actually add one more thing to level selection. So first of all, we need to just have a new button. In fact, it's just going to be very much similar to this one. So I'll drag it down here, and I'll put it down at the bottom, and I'll call this return button. And in the text, did I somehow not get the text? That's strange. Okay, I don't know how I ended up getting a button when I copied it, but okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this again to return button, and text will say return to menu. And I'll just reposition that. And there we have it. So we have our little button here. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So the function this return button is going to call is switch page. And then I'm going to disable this page. And then this select level button is going to also call the same function. So that is going to be switch page. And now what we should have, hopefully, is when we hit play. Why is that text not attached? Okay, somehow I managed to separate the text from the level button. There we go. So I'm going to hit select level, and it changes page to this, and then I can return to menu, and there we go. So nice and easy, and then I can click this button, load into the game, and then I can get back out. So nice and easy. And of course, you can add as many pages as you want. So I could add another one that has maybe only one level, just for demonstration. Add another one that has, I guess maybe I should duplicate this one again and delete, say, that button. And then as long as all I need to do is go to canvas, drag these in. And now if I hit play, of course, this isn't going to return to menu, I've realized now. It's going to move on to the next page. So perhaps calling it return to menu wasn't the best idea, but you get the idea. Okay, so I'm going to delete these extra ones because they're not necessary. But yeah, we'd call it like next page or something like that. And obviously, if you wanted to go to a specific page, we could use what we used before. So we could say, we could have this function switch page, and then we could have another one, public void go to page. And this one could take int page ID. And then we could specify the page ID here, and then just do the same thing. So we would just say current page ID set false. We do this again, except we instead of saying plus plus, we'll say equals page ID. And then we'll set this to false. Now, obviously, we could put something in here to protect against you using a page ID that doesn't exist, one that's outside the range. Hopefully, since we are setting this up and we'd have to manually type in the ID anyway, it's not like this should go wrong. So you don't really need that protection in this case, as you shouldn't type in a number that doesn't exist in the list. And if you do, you can easily correct it. It's not something that's going to create an error during the running of the game. So that is our page navigation. And I guess that will cover it for now. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.